My phone finally stopped vibrating, not because the network failed, but because the battery gave out after the 23rd missed call. I sat at my kitchen island, staring at the black screen while the morning sun illuminated the dust motes dancing over the hardwood floor. The house was completely quiet. It was the kind of quiet that usually brings peace, and today, it brought absolute clarity. My name is Dorothy Sullivan. I am 68 years old, a widow for 8 years, and the owner of a comfortable suburban estate and a newly renovated lakefront property a few hours north. Just 2 hours earlier, I had poured my first cup of Earl Grey tea and answered a call from my son, Leo. His wedding to Vanessa was exactly 5 days away. I had called to confirm what time the caterers were arriving at the lake house, which I had offered as the venue for their lavish rehearsal dinner and weekend stay. When Leo answered, he didn't sound like a groom preparing for the happiest day of his life. He sounded cornered. He dodged my question about the caterer. A long, painful pause stretched through the receiver. I asked him to spit it out. He took a shaky breath and dropped the sentence that permanently altered our relationship. "Mom, I don't think you should come to the wedding." I didn't drop my teacup. I didn't cry. I asked completely calmly why I was suddenly barred from my own son's wedding. Leo stumbled over his words. "Vanessa thinks... Well, she thinks your presence will disrupt the vibe. Her parents are flying in their country club friends, and you just don't really mesh with her crowd. My wife doesn't want you there." I looked out my window at the garden I had tended for 30 years. I had just paid the remaining balance for their $50,000 wedding reception out of my own savings. I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Understood." I hung up the phone. I didn't wait for his weak apologies or his justifications. The conversation was over. Only 5 days left until the ceremony, and I suddenly had a very free schedule. I didn't shed a single tear. Crying requires a feeling of loss, and in that moment, I only felt a heavy, sharp sense of reality. For the past 2 years, I had watched Vanessa mold my son into a status-obsessed echo of himself. I had tolerated her snide remarks about my modest clothing and my preference for gardening over country club brunches. I thought keeping the peace was what a good mother did. I was wrong. Generosity without boundaries is simply an invitation for abuse. I walked into my home office and booted up my desktop computer. I logged into my online banking portal. I had agreed to fund the catering, the live band, and the massive floral installations. The final vendor payments were scheduled to clear automatically at noon today. With a steady hand, I navigated to the scheduled transfers. I clicked cancel on the florist. I clicked cancel on the band. I clicked cancel on the catering company. I watched the thousands of dollars return to my available balance. Next, I picked up my landline and dialed Jim, a trusted local contractor who had helped me manage the lake property for over a decade. "Morning, Dorothy," Jim answered cheerfully. "Morning, Jim. I need a quick favor. Drive over to the lake house and replace the digital smart lock on the front door with the old heavy-duty deadbolt. Take down the gate code, too." Jim didn't hesitate. "You got it. Do you want the new physical keys mailed to you?" "I'll come pick them up later this week," I replied. "And Jim, if any delivery trucks or wedding vendors show up there this weekend, turn them away. The property is closed." I set the phone down. I hadn't yelled. I hadn't argued. I merely reclaimed control over my own assets. Around noon, I plugged my cell phone into the charger. When the screen lit up, the notifications flooded in like a broken dam. 23 missed calls. A string of frantic text messages from Leo and Vanessa about declined cards and panicked vendors. They wanted my money, but they didn't want me. They were about to learn how those two things were permanently attached. It took them exactly an hour to make the drive from their downtown apartment to my house. I heard the aggressive crunch of tires on my gravel driveway before I saw Leo's car abruptly park halfway on the lawn. I stayed seated on my porch swing, a fresh glass of iced lemonade resting in my hand. Vanessa slammed the passenger door and stomped up the walkway, her designer heels clicking furiously against the stone pavers. Leo trailed behind her, looking pale and thoroughly miserable. "What is going on with the bank?" Vanessa demanded, entirely skipping any form of greeting. She stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, crossing her arms. "The florist just called me in tears. She said the final payment was reversed. You need to call your bank and fix this glitch right now." I took a slow sip of my lemonade. I looked at the ice cubes clinking against the glass, then directly into Vanessa's eyes. "There is no glitch, Vanessa," I stated quietly. Leo stepped forward, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Mom, what do you mean? You promised to cover those vendors. The wedding is in 5 days. We can't pay for this out of pocket." I didn't stand up. I simply looked at my son. "I received a phone call this morning informing me that I am an embarrassment and not welcome at the wedding. I respected your wishes. I removed myself entirely from the event." Vanessa's face flushed a deep, angry red. "We didn't say, remove your money. We just meant my parents' friends are very traditional and we wanted a specific aesthetic. You're overreacting and ruining my wedding over a tiny misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding," I replied, my tone unwavering. "You view me as a walking checkbook. You made a choice to exclude me to maintain your image. That is your choice. But it is my choice to close that checkbook." Vanessa stepped up onto the first porch stair, pointing a manicured finger at me. "You wire that money right now, or you will never see your future grandchildren. I will make sure you are cut out of our lives, completely." She thought it was a trump card. She thought the threat of isolation would break me. I didn't flinch. I slowly stood up from the swing, smoothing the front of my linen trousers. I looked down at Vanessa, who suddenly seemed much smaller. "If you want to be completely independent of me, I suggest you start acting like it," I said. "Including where you live." Leo's head snapped up. "What?" "The downtown condo you two currently reside in," I reminded him. "The one I own. The one you have been living in rent-free for 2 years while you saved for a house savings that apparently went toward designer shoes and country club memberships." Vanessa's confidence faltered. "You can't do that. We live there. I own the property. I pay the property taxes. I pay the HOA fees." I corrected her. "If I am not family enough to attend your wedding, I am certainly not landlord enough to subsidize your lifestyle." I walked over to the small table beside my porch swing, picked up a manila folder I had prepared an hour ago, and handed it to Leo. He took it with shaking hands. "That is a standard 30-day notice to vacate," I explained calmly. "You have exactly 1 month to remove yourselves and your belongings from my property. Leave the keys on the kitchen counter when you go." "Mom, please." Leo started, his voice cracking. "We don't have the funds for a deposit on a new place. Everything we had went into the honeymoon." "Then I suggest you cancel the honeymoon," I replied. Vanessa grabbed Leo's arm, glaring at me with pure hatred. "Come on, Leo. We don't need her. We'll figure it out. She's just a bitter old woman." 30 days, I repeated, turning my back on them. I walked inside my house, shut the front door, and locked the deadbolt. I didn't peek through the blinds to watch them leave. I went to the kitchen and began preparing a roast for dinner. The silence in the house didn't feel lonely anymore. It felt victorious. Saturday arrived with bright, clear skies. It was the day I was supposed to be hiding in the background of my son's wedding, wearing a dress Vanessa had dictated, trying not to embarrass them. Instead, I woke up early, pulled on my comfortable gardening clothes, and went to work on my hydrangeas. The soil felt good in my hands. Around noon, my cell phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Jim. "Just thought you should know, a couple of confused delivery vans tried to get up the lake house driveway this morning. Gate was locked. They turned around." Also, your son showed up about an hour ago trying to punch in the old door code. Looked pretty stressed. I typed back a quick response. Thank you, Jim. Enjoy your weekend. They had actually thought I was bluffing. They had assumed I would cave at the last minute, unlock the lake house for their rehearsal dinner, and silently wire the funds. When they realized the doors were physically locked and the vendors were gone, reality must have hit them like a freight train. Later that evening, Leo left a voicemail. I listened to it while pouring myself a glass of red wine on the patio. Mom! The venue canceled on us. We had to move the ceremony to a public park. Vanessa is hysterical. Her parents are furious. Please, can you just unlock the condo account? We need something to pay for the hotel tonight. Just call me back. His voice sounded small, like a child who had dropped his ice cream cone. But he wasn't a child. He was a grown man who had made a conscious decision to let his fiancée disrespect his mother. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't owe him a rescue. 3 weeks passed. The supposed wedding had happened, though. From the complete lack of social media posts, I gathered it wasn't the luxury event Vanessa had dreamed of. The deadline on the 30-day notice was fast approaching. I hadn't heard from Leo since the wedding day, but on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone lit up with a text message from Vanessa. Hi, Dorothy. We are packing up the condo. I know tensions were high, but Leo really wants to keep the leather sectional sofa and the dining set. Since you gave them to us as a housewarming gift, we'll be taking them with us. Hope you're doing well. I read the text twice. The audacity was almost impressive. The furniture in question was a set of custom high-end pieces I had purchased specifically for the condo's layout, costing well over $12,000. I had never gifted them the furniture. I had simply furnished the apartment they were borrowing. I didn't text back. Engaging in a digital argument was a waste of energy. Instead, I picked up my phone and called Jim again. Jim, are you free this coming Saturday morning? I asked. Always free for you, Dorothy. What's the project? I need someone with an intimidating truck and a good eye to help me supervise a move-out at the downtown condo. I just want to make sure the fixtures and the furnished items stay exactly where they belong. Say no more, Jim chuckled. I'll bring my large thermos of coffee and my resting grumpy face. I spent the rest of the week running errands and organizing my gardening shed. I felt a profound sense of lightness. By refusing to argue, I was starving them of the drama they needed to play the victims. Saturday morning, Jim and I parked across the street from the condo building. We watched as a rented moving box truck pulled up to the loading zone. Leo and Vanessa stepped out looking exhausted and tense. Jim and I walked across the street and entered the lobby right behind them. We rode the elevator up in complete silence. When Leo unlocked the condo door and turned around to see me standing in the hallway, he froze. Mom, what are you doing here? Supervising the move-out, I stated, stepping past him into my apartment. Jim followed, leaning casually against the doorframe, his arms crossed over his chest. Vanessa dropped an empty cardboard box on the floor. You don't need to be here. We know how to pack. I am here to ensure my property remains on the premises, I said, walking into the living room. I pointed to the large leather sectional. The furniture stays. The kitchen appliances stay. The washer and dryer stay. You may take your clothes, your personal electronics, and whatever small decor you purchased. Vanessa's face twisted in rage. You gave us this furniture. You can't take it back. Show me the receipt with your name on it. Vanessa, I challenged calmly. Or show me a single text message where I explicitly stated this $12,000 custom sofa was a gift. You cannot. She turned to Leo, shrieking, Are you going to let her do this? Say something, Leo. Leo looked at me then, at Jim's impassive, sturdy frame blocking the doorway. He looked at the floor. Just leave the couch, Vanessa. We don't have room for it in the new apartment anyway. Vanessa screamed in frustration, kicking the empty cardboard box across the room. She spent the next 4 hours throwing her clothes into garbage bags, muttering insults under her breath. I sat on my leather sofa, quietly reading a magazine while Jim stood guard by the door. We didn't lift a single finger to help them. By 2 in the afternoon, the condo was entirely cleared of their personal belongings. Leo placed the 2 sets of keys on the kitchen counter. He didn't look me in the eye. "We're done," he mumbled. "Goodbye, Leo," I replied. Vanessa stormed out without a backward glance, the heels of her boots stomping loudly down the hallway. The heavy condo door clicked shut behind them. Jim walked over and inspected the lock. "I'll swap this cylinder out right now. Takes 10 minutes. "Thank you, Jim," I said, walking over to the large floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The apartment was pristine, quiet, and fully mine again. Over the next few weeks, I hired a professional cleaning service and put the condo up for rent. Because of the prime location and the high-end furniture, I secured a reliable, quiet corporate tenant within 10 days. The rental income provided a nice boost to my retirement fund, which I promptly used to book a 2-week cruise to the Mediterranean for myself. Life returned to a beautiful, predictable rhythm. I tended my garden. I spent weekends at the lake house, reading books on the dock. I didn't constantly check my phone for crises. I didn't have to navigate Vanessa's passive-aggressive comments or Leo's constant requests for financial bailouts. I had cut the anchor, and for the first time in years, I was sailing smoothly. 8 months passed without a single word from my son. Winter thawed into spring, and I was on my front porch potting some new ferns when a familiar older model sedan pulled up to the curb. It wasn't the luxury SUV Leo used to drive. The car door opened and Leo stepped out. He looked thinner, his shoulders slumped and his clothes were wrinkled. He walked slowly up the driveway, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. I kept my hands in the potting soil, gently packing dirt around the roots of a fern. "Hello, Leo." "Hi, Mom," he said, his voice raspy. He shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. I didn't invite him up to the porch. I waited. "Vanessa left me," he blurted out, staring at his worn shoes. "When the money dried up and we had to move into that tiny 1-bedroom across town, she couldn't handle it. She said I was a failure because I couldn't manage my own mother. She filed for divorce last month." I felt a brief flicker of pity for him, but I firmly stamped it out. Pity is a trap. "I'm sorry to hear your marriage didn't work out," I replied neutrally, picking up my watering can. He finally looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "Mom, I have nothing. She took half of what little we had left in the joint account. I can't afford the rent on my own. I was wondering if I could move back into my old room here, just for a few months, just to get back on my feet." He stood there expecting the maternal instinct to kick in. He expected me to drop my gardening tools, rush down the stairs, and welcome him back into the safety net he had so carelessly shredded. I set the watering can down on the wooden table. I wiped my hands on my apron and looked directly at my son. "No, Leo." He blinked, stunned. "No, Mom. I'm your son. I have nowhere else to go." "You are a 32-year-old man," I corrected him. "You made adult decisions and now you are facing adult consequences. You allowed your wife to banish me from your life when you thought you didn't need me. You cannot simply walk back in because you need a free place to sleep." "I made a mistake," he yelled, frustration finally breaking through his sad facade. "I was trying to keep my wife happy, and you sacrificed my dignity to do it," I stated firmly. "I forgive you, Leo. I truly do. But forgiveness does not mean I will reinstate your access to my home or my finances. You need to learn how to stand on your own 2 feet without my wallet propping you up." He stared at me, realizing the door was completely, immovably shut. There was no negotiation. There were no tears for him to manipulate. If you want to have a cup of coffee with me next week, you can call and we will meet at a diner, I offered calmly. But you are not moving in. I suggest you look for a roommate. Leo's shoulders slumped entirely. He realized he had no leverage left. Without a word, he turned around, walked back to his old car, and drove away. That evening, I hosted a dinner party on my patio. Jim came over along with a few of my neighbors and friends from my book club. We drank good wine, ate the roast I had prepared, and laughed until the stars came out. Sitting at the head of my table, surrounded by people who respected me, I felt a deep, unwavering peace. I hadn't lost a son. I had simply stopped being a victim in my own life. I built this home with my own hands, and anyone who wanted to sit at my table had to bring respect. If not, the door stays locked. If my story reminded you how important it is to protect your peace and stop funding your own disrespect, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments below, how would you have handled Leo's request to move back in? Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a story.